So anybody that's been around C4s for a little bit of time is probably all too familiar with that sound there. And if those of you guys out there that are new to these cars, well, then you probably have a headlight issue and is why you're watching this video. I'm Mark from Mirrock Corvette, and today we're going to talk about the headlight motors and how to rebuild them. And yes, I do know there's a lot of other videos out there on YouTube about this, but you guys have been asking for more videos, and am I going with the low-hanging fruit on an easy video to do? Yeah, I probably am. But you know what? At least I'll have my own video of how to do it, show you how we do that here. Maybe you'll learn something different that you haven't seen in the other videos. So before we go to take this headlight assembly out, I should probably explain what that noise is for you guys that are new, and give you a little bit better understanding of the system here. Now this is applicable to 1988 to 96 Corvettes, and everything we do with the headlight motors is going to be 88 to 96 model years only. So if you have an 84 to 87, you need a different video than this one here. But what's going on is the headlight control module, which is located down on this inner front fender panel, it is controlling the relays. It basically is the relay to control whether the motors rotate up or down. Now that relay, it is looking for basically the motor to do its revolution and hit a positive stop point whenever it is open or closed. The module can actually sense that the headlight motor has made its full rotation, and then it would shut the motor off from running anymore. Now whenever the bushings, which we'll get to inside the headlight motor, are worn out, the module will not see that the motor has finished its complete revolution. So it will continue to supply power to the motor, and that's why the motor will run for approximately 5 seconds until the module times out and says to shut the motor off anyways. All right, so we're going to go ahead and pull this headlight assembly out of the hood, and do want to point out that there's going to be 10mm bolts, nuts actually, and on this one here we have 2 on the left, 2 on the right. Now some of your later cars down here, well, the earlier cars will have 2 additional bolts down at the bottom, and some of your later cars, they actually didn't even apply those from the factory, typically like 95, 96 cars. Also, some of your earlier cars, they'll have an additional little L bracket in on this lower bolt on the inside. Again, later cars didn't have that, so you would have an additional 13mm bolt to take out there for some of the earlier cars. But we're going to go, and first we want to start with just unplug the connector for it, and then we're going to go over, we're going to start with the inside bolts. Start with the inside bolts so that when you get to the outside ones, a little bit easier. Just put a hand on it, take your last bolt out, remove the assembly, and you're ready to go. All right, so we got our headlight assembly over on the bench to work on it here, and somehow it multiplied on the way over here. But really just want to go through, show you quick differences on how to visually tell these things apart here. So on these first 2 headlight assemblies here, these motors, 88 to 96 motors, but there is a difference with them. So for your 88 through 90, they will have 2 plug connections, one for the light, one for the motor. 91 to 96 combined in a single connector. But really everything else, same motor for the 88 to 96, is just the wiring connection different. This assembly over here, this is your 84 to 87 motor. Totally different housing, totally different design, control philosophy than what you have for the 88 to 96. Some of the brackets and the internal parts of the rest of the assembly are the same throughout the other years, but everything we do as far as rebuilding this motor is we're going to be with the 88 to 96 ones. All right, so we're ready to get started on tearing this motor off of here and getting it repaired. So before we start into that, I'm going to just go through a simple rundown of the tools that I'm going to use. You're going to need a little Torx bit set, an extension, possibly a shorter extension if you just varying lengths, whatever you're comfortable with using. 1/4 inch socket, small screwdriver, a hammer, a little punch set. I like to use a little battery powered impact gun rather than a wrench, but whatever you got around, normal hand tools all will work. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to start over on here, and I like to start with the pin that's inside this bracket here and get that punched out. Now I actually went through and got it started a little bit first, so you didn't have to see me beating on it, but we're just going to go tap that out, and that little roll pin fell down in here in the bottom. We'll pick it up out of there later. It's okay for right now. So from that point there, we're going to go and grab our Torx bit, and we're going to go to this back bolt here, and we're going to take this one completely out. Now we have another bolt to get to. I'm going to use a longer extension. Now the other bolt for the assembly, it's down in here, if you can see that. So that one there, what we're going to do is we're going to rotate the headlight assembly around, which you can do just by rotating this back knob. And I'm just getting this opened up so that I can go and stick my bit down in there. Now this one, you don't need to take it the whole way out, and it's actually easier if you leave it in. So you're just going to just loosen it up some, because all that does is lets this bracket then slide here. Okay, and that's just it's not actually a hole, there's a little groove for it. So just loosen that one, don't take it out completely. Oh, and I forgot to say at the beginning of this, but probably obviously, put a towel down to work on the assembly so that you don't scratch everything up. If you're more comfortable doing this, with having the covers off so that you don't scratch this area or anything, by all means do it. So anyways, moving on here, then the next thing we're going to do is we need to take these bolts out here. So I'm going to start with taking this top one out. Now also with this bottom one, see, now that we loosen that up, we can move this back to get to that one. Otherwise it's right up against there and you can't get it out. So we're just going to slide that back. I like to use the extension for this one. Whoop. There we go. That one can be a little bugger to get back in sometimes. Then we're going to go over here. We have one more bolt to take out. And we have that loose from there as well. Keep track, that bolts there are going to be longer than the other ones. All the other ones that I've taken out before, they're all the same. So now that we have that out here, we need to take the motor shaft off of this bracket here. All right, we'll grab a little bit bigger screwdriver in there, and we're just going to go and pry that off, pulling the motor back a little bit while we do it. Sometimes they can be a little tricky. Almost there. There we go. Now, one thing I want to mention here while we have that apart like that. On some of your earlier motors, there will be an additional bracket that is in there. It actually acts as kind of a rotating stop whenever this moves around. I don't always see these on the motors. A lot of the later ones, 94, 5, 6, I will not see that little bracket in there. It's actually not even really that necessary. So if you have it, take note of which way it's in there. You can put it back on. If you forget, no harm, no foul on that. So now that we have the motor disconnected, we can basically pull it away from the assembly, lay it on its side, and then we have 3 1/4-inch bolts on it there. So we're going to go take the 3 of those out. All right, so when we lift this off of here, First off, you're going to see that we have a gasket that's below here. Now this gasket's a little bit torn here. Then we are going to have the gear assembly. You also want to keep track of when you do pull that off there. See on the inside of here, there's a couple shims. All right, keep track of where those shims are, what positions they are in, just so that you can put it back together correctly as the way it was taken apart. So now we have a driver's side headlight motor assembly here. These ones are really easy to get apart. All we do, you see we have the shaft sticking down at the end here. So we're just going to press it down on the table. That's going to pop right out of there. And we can grab it. And we have our gear assembly. And all this powder here, this is the bushings on the inside coming apart. But I am going to show you as well, this is a passenger side headlight motor. So the gear was in this one, the shaft was down, sticking out that side of the motor. On the passenger side one, see, we don't have a hole on that side of the motor. So I've taken the bolts out of this one, and I just want to show you, these ones can be tougher to get that gear assembly out of there. So we're going to pull the cover off. And for these ones, if you are having trouble, the best thing to do, get a little screwdriver, just stick it through that shaft there, use it as a handle, and you'll have to work at it. I've already had this one out, but well, you have to work at it a little bit sometimes, but then they'll pull out that way. They're a little bit tougher for you. Same thing, keep track of the shims, any bushings, bearings in there, anything, just keep track of the position that they were in. So now back over to the yummy part of it. So we're going to go and we are going to grab this gear and split it apart. And there's all that powder of those pellets in there that have just turned to mush over the years. So what's going on is basically whenever those have turned to mush, and this is in here, it's just rotating and grinding that mush around, and eventually it gets to the point where the headlight won't even rotate. So we're going to go and take a look at how we rebuild these here. So you are going to see out there online that there is all the headlight rebuild kits, that they will come with a plastic gear and they will come with 3 bushings. Now, I can tell you that 95% of the headlight motors out there, not all of them, but pretty much most of them, are this gear is going to be okay. And actually, if you come in on this gear here and look, you'll see that there's just the old grease in there. If we wipe it down or anything, those teeth are all okay. There's nothing wrong with that gear. So what we do with them is, for the bushings, this is a stick of Delrin rod, 7/16 inch diameter. You buy it at hardware stores. I bought this as a 5-foot stick from McMaster-Carr. It's like 20 bucks. And then you basically just go, take a little tubing cutter, go ahead, cut yourself off some little bushings or pellets, whatever people like to call them. Either's fine, but just cut some of your own off there and you'll be ready to go. Now with like a 5-foot stick of this, it was about $20-some from McMaster-Carr, and I think I figured it out with the lengths that you cut them. You can rebuild probably about 40 headlight motors with this stick once it was its full length, rather than paying 20 bucks for 3 of them and a gear that you're probably not going to need. They used to sell just these bushings on their own. They may still out there, but if you're looking to do it on the cheap, just get a stick of Delrin. You'll be fine with that. Some of those rebuild kits, they will also come with a replacement gasket. Now this one here is just a little bit torn. You could reuse it if you want. Just when you put it back together, grab yourself a little bit of RTV, put a dab on it there. If the gasket's completely all tore up, just take the RTV and put it around the top surface there. So not really needed to buy a specific rebuild kit for these. So we're going to we're going to clean up some of this dust here, get this gear all cleaned up, and then we'll go and put this thing back together here. All right, so we have all of our pieces cleaned up here. We cleaned all the old dust and stuff out of our gear here. We cleaned it out of the motor housing. We were careful. There's some other shims that are down in there, but made sure that those didn't get lost. We'll stick those back in place down there. And basically everything cleaned up, ready to go back together. Now, a few additional things I wanted to mention about those rebuild kits that are out there. Since most all of these, like I said, 95%, you will see some gears that are bad sometimes, but very rare. Since the gears are usually always able to be reused, those brass gears that are out there, do not spend the money on them. There is no point to those whatsoever. Again, you really probably don't even need a kit. Whenever we cut these bushings here, the pellets, basically we're just cutting them about the depth that they sit down within that gear. Doesn't have to be perfect, really just as long as they're round. And again, these are 7/16 inch diameter. Sometimes whenever you cut them with the little tubing cutter, there will be a little ridge left in the middle where they snap off. Just take them, rub them off on a piece of sandpaper. They don't have to be completely even, again, just round. So we're going to go ahead. We are going to assemble this back together here. So what we'll do is we'll take the gear, we'll put it with the pellet side up, and we will take the 3 pellets and we will just set them back in place there. Then we are going to take the shaft and we are going to go and drop that down. And sometimes you'll just have to play with this a second until you can get everything to line up. And excuse me if I struggle with this, because it's probably camera does that, but there we go. We got them all back together now in there, and that assembly there is good to go. So now at this point, I'm going to grab just some grease here. Anytime with plastics, you should use a synthetic based grease, and just put some on your fingers and work it around into the gear here. So get a little bit too much on there, it's all right. It's not going to hurt anything. All right. I like to take a little extra left of my fingers, just spread them on that metal gear that's inside there. Okay. So again, this was the driver's side one. So that shaft is going to go down through the center, and we are just going to put it in the hole there. Get it pressed down, and that's it. Now we have our 2 top shims that were on it. Take the 2 top shims. Now we have our gasket. Now you remember again, I said that this gasket here was ripped. Again, not a horrible deal if it's ripped a little bit. Again, you're not probably driving these cars underwater of where you have to actually worry about that. But if it makes you feel any better where that rip is, I'm just going to take a little bit of silicone, if we can get it to come out of this tube here. Hold on a second. Well, it came out of the side. That still works. Need a new tube. And we'll just brush a little bit of silicone on there. Again, not a big deal. We'll clean the excess off here in a second. Let me get all this off my hands. All right. Then we're going to take our cover and line it back up. Put it back on there. Start our 3/4 inch screws. See that gasket sticking out there just a little bit, but I'll just hold it in place. All right. 3 bolts are started. Go and snug them up. There we go. Gonna wipe off that little bit of extra gasket or silicone there, but we'll be all right with that there. Okay, and there we are. We're ready to put this back on the assembly. So for starting with that, get this out of the way. So we are going to, basically we're going to lift this part up here, and we are going to take our motor and we are going to put it in so that we can put this back together. Now you will notice that it may be in a different location because you had it apart, but you just rotate your motor around wherever it needs to be so that we can get this to line up again. Now sometimes these can be a little bit tricky to get them to fully go in there, and sometimes you may have to give it a little tap with a hammer, and that's why, again, if you want to put a towel or something on that cover just to protect it, it's not a bad idea. Okay, sorry for a little cutout. Sometimes those are a little bit tough to get them lined up. You got to give them a little bit harder taps with a hammer, but we got that back together there. Now we're going to take our pin and we're just going to stick it up there like that, at least get it started. And we'll see if I can do this okay for the camera here. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky. Actually, we will take an extension. We'll hold it on the top there. Give me a little bit more room to work with this here. There, we at least got it started now. So make sure that we again have this pressed in there the full way possible. Like I said, they are a little finicky. All right, sorry for the little cut there. Had to. Sometimes it's a little bit tough to get that in far enough, get that pin to start back in there. So I had an extra hand hold that there. But then basically we got that pin started through here and the shaft. We're going to take a larger punch and just seat that down in there. Now notice I had not put any of the other bolts in yet. So now what we're going to do is we are going to start with putting our motor bolts here in place. So we're going to rotate it around to the correct position. And we are going to start with this one up here. And let's see, doing it a little bit backwards. Don't want to get in the camera's way. There we go. So we got that one started. Then I like to take this longer one here on this side. I'm going to put that one in. Again, we're just starting these. We are not cranking them down. Now the one on the inside, which again, always can be a little bit tougher to get in there just because of its position down in there. We'll get that if we can. Like I said, this one a little bit tougher to start sometimes just because of its position down there. All right, there we go again. Sorry about the cut. You know, take the pressure of the camera away, and then maybe you actually get somewhere. But we got that started in there now. So we are going to take our gun with our Torx bit on the end. Run that one in. Run the top one in. Run the side one in. Now, remember we still have this one down here that's loose. So we'll rotate around again until we get it so that we can stick our socket down in there. But I almost made a mistake. Before we tighten that one down, you want to start this one down here. Because if you tighten that one, then this one here may be in the wrong spot. So we'll Tighten that up. Tighten that one up. Take our wire, stick it back around the edge here. How they are when they're original. Thanks for the extra hand camera operator. And that is it. You're done. And now we're ready to go and put this back into the car. All right, now I've already taken the car or the headlight and I have set it back in place here. And the reason I did that off camera is kind of a little bit of a two-person job or moving back and forth. Now see these holes that are in these brackets here, you know, they are bigger than what the stud is. That's the alignment. So whenever you're putting it in, you know, look at your gaps all the way around on that headlight lid there, so you get everything centered whenever you go to tighten these back up. So we already put it in place there, tightened down our top two bolts so that we had it centered where it needs to be. Tighten up our other side bolt here. Wire connector. Now there is a clip down in here for this wire connector. You do want to try to make sure that you put that clip, slide that back in place here. And I'll take care of that in a minute after I stop the video. But you know, make sure that you put that little clip back in there. I've seen people go and they change these motors and then they have the wires hanging out over here out of the way. And then the first time the headlight rotates around, it catches on the wires and gets stopped there. So, you know, that about wraps it up. And we'll see what we have now for it working all right. All right, I already tested it once, but show it here for you guys. Rotates around. You don't see this keep moving here. Everything's working back the way that they should. So that about wraps it up. Again, did a quick dirty rundown video of that. Like I said, I know there's other videos out there showing how to do the same thing. Maybe they did it differently than me. And you know what, but that's the way that we do it here. Try to show you that you don't really need to have a rebuild kit for one of these. As long as you get that Darlin rod, you can repair it in an afternoon at home all by yourself. So thank you guys for watching. Hope you learned something from this video. If you have any questions, mirrockcorvette.com. Like, subscribe, do all those things. We'll see you next time.